The stars looked like tiny dots of light against the black emptiness of space. The UNHS Compassion moved quietly among them. The ship was huge and white, with a big red cross painted on its sides. This cross was a sign that everyone in space knew. It meant the ship was there to help the sick and hurt. Dr. Jae-yun Park walked down the clean white hallway of the medical bay. She had been on the Compassion for 5 years now. Her black hair was tied back in a neat bun, and her blue uniform was crisp and clean. She liked things to be in order. The hospital ship had 400 rooms for patients and 20 operation rooms. It could help beings from over 50 different planets. Dr. Park was proud to work here. The ship showed that humans wanted to help others, not fight them. Dr. Park entered room 217 where her young patient waited. The child had blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the soft lights. He came from the Rigel system, a place far from Earth. His name was difficult for humans to say, so he told them to call him Blue. "Good morning, Blue," Dr. Park said with a smile. She took out her medical scanner and moved it over the child's leg. The bone had been badly broken when his family ship crashed. Blue looked at her with large purple eyes. "Will it hurt today?" he asked through the small translator box on the table. "No hurt," Dr. Park said slowly, knowing the translator sometimes missed words. "I am just checking your progress." The scanner showed a green light, meaning the bone was healing well. She adjusted some settings on the healing field generator around his leg. "Just a few more treatments and you'll be running again," she assured him. Blue's mother sat nearby. She had the same blue skin, but with silver markings on her face. She nodded thanks to Dr. Park. The Compassion had been sent to the Epsilon sector after a large asteroid hit a small moon where many different species lived. Thousands were hurt. Earth wanted to show it cared by sending its best hospital ship. In the main treatment area, Dr. Park's team worked with patients from 12 different planets. Nurse Dongman helped a tall, thin being with breathing problems. Medical Officer Jiwoo checked the bandages on a furry creature with 6 legs. "We have 30 new patients coming up from the surface today," said Nurse Soman as she handed Dr. Park a datapad. Dr. Park nodded. "Have we sent the medical supplies down to the emergency camp?" "Yes, Captain Kim approved the last shipment an hour ago." The ship carried no weapons. It didn't need them. For 200 years, all species had agreed not to attack medical vessels. The Compassion traveled with only shields for protection against space debris. Dr. Park went to check on her next patient when a voice came over the ship's speakers. It was Captain Taewoo Kim. He sounded calm but serious. "Dr. Park, please report to the bridge immediately." She frowned. This was unusual. The medical staff rarely went to the bridge. She took a quick lift up 4 levels and walked into the ship's control center. Captain Kim stood by the main viewing screen. He was tall with broad shoulders and short black hair turning gray at the temples. His face looked worried. "What's happening, Captain?" Dr. Park asked. He pointed to the screen. "We have unknown vessels approaching. 3 of them. They're not responding to our messages." The screen showed 3 dark ships moving toward them. They were shaped like arrowheads and much smaller than the Compassion, but they looked fast. "Could they be bringing more injured?" Dr. Park asked. The communications officer shook his head. "They're not sending any signals at all, and they're moving in an attack pattern." Captain Kim pressed a button. "This is Captain Taewoo Kim of the UNHS Compassion. We are an unarmed medical vessel on a humanitarian mission. Please identify yourselves." No answer came back. "Send our medical status again," Captain Kim ordered, "and boost the hull lights. Make sure they can see our markings clearly." The outside of the ship lit up, showing the huge red medical symbol. "They're charging weapons," shouted the sensor officer. Captain Kim's eyes widened. "That's impossible. They can see we're a hospital ship." He turned to the ship's speakers. "All crew, emergency positions. Patients to safe areas. This is not a drill." Dr. Park could hardly believe what was happening. No one attacked hospital ships. It was the most basic rule of space. "Should I get back to medical?" she asked. Before Captain Kim could answer, the whole ship shook hard. Dr. Park fell against the wall. Alarms began to sound everywhere. "Direct hit to our port side," someone yelled. The lights flickered. Another hit made the floor shake. Captain Kim helped Dr. Park stand. "Get to your patients. They'll need you now." On the screen, Dr. Park saw the attacking ships clearly for the first time. They had strange symbols on their hulls, symbols she recognized from news reports. They were Keldari warships. The Keldari were new to this part of space. They had appeared 10 years ago and didn't join in normal talks with other species. They kept to themselves and sometimes took over small moons or asteroids. "Why would they attack us?" Dr. Park asked as another blast hit the ship. "I don't know," Captain Kim said grimly, "but they've made a terrible mistake." The ship shook again, harder this time. Emergency lights came on as the main power failed. As Dr. Park ran back toward the medical bay, she knew one thing for sure. Earth would not let this attack go unanswered. The Keldari had just done something no one had dared do for centuries. They had attacked those who came only to heal. The emergency lights cast a red glow over what remained of the trauma ward. It had been 3 days since the attack. The hospital ship Compassion was now just a broken shell floating in space. Dr. Jayan Park sat on the floor with her back against the wall. She was very tired. She had not slept much since the attack. Her white doctor's coat was stained with blood, some of it green and blue from alien patients, some of it red from human crew members. Only a small part of the huge ship still had air. When the Keldari ships attacked, most areas were open to space. Many people died quickly. Others died when the life support systems failed. Now, only 26 people remained alive, 17 crew members and 9 patients. "Drink some water," Nurse Hyun Lee said, handing Dr. Park a small cup. Hyun's face was dirty, and she had a cut above her right eye. Her uniform was torn at the shoulder. "You should save it for the patients," Dr. Park said. "You need to stay strong," Nurse Lee insisted. "We all need you." Dr. Park took the cup and drank slowly. The water tasted metallic. It had been recycled too many times. Across the room, Engineer Jae-hyun was lying on a makeshift bed. His leg was badly burned when an electrical panel exploded during the attack. Nurse Lee had been working to keep him alive. "How is he?" Dr. Park asked. "Not good," Nurse Lee said. "I need more medicine for his pain. We used the last of it this morning." Dr. Park nodded. They were running out of everything. Food, water, medicine, hope. Medical Officer Sung-jin Choi was trying to fix a broken tablet computer by the light of a small emergency lamp. His round glasses kept sliding down his nose as he worked. "Any luck?" Dr. Park asked him. "I got it working for a few minutes," Sung-jin said without looking up. "Long enough to see that the main systems are completely destroyed. The Keldari were very thorough. Our oxygen recyclers are at 30%. Nurse Lee reported after checking a small control panel. "Maybe 2 more days if we're lucky." Dr. Park closed her eyes for a moment. 2 days was not enough time for help to reach them. The Compassion had been in a remote area when it was attacked. "The distress signal went through before they destroyed the main array," said Sung-jin, his face lit by the blue glow of circuitry he was examining. "Earth knows what happened. They've seen the footage." "How can you be sure?" asked a young crew member named Minho. His arm was in a sling made from torn bed sheets. "I was on the bridge with Captain Kim when we sent it," Sung-jin explained. "We broadcast everything. The approach of the Keldari ships, our attempts to contact them, the first attacks. The signal was sent on all emergency channels. Earth received it." A patient from the Andromeda region made a clicking sound that his translator converted to words. "Why would they attack a hospital ship? We had no weapons." No one answered. No one understood why. In the corner, an older nurse named Jisoo was caring for a small child patient. The child had been recovering from surgery when the attack happened. Now she was scared and asking for her parents, who had been in another part of the ship. "Tell me a story," the child said. Jisoo stroked the child's hair. "Once upon a time, there was a brave doctor who sailed among the stars, helping anyone who was sick or hurt." Dr. Park turned away. She couldn't bear to listen. "We need to check the sealed doors again," she said. "If any of them fail, we'll lose our air." Sungjin put down his tools. "I'll go with you." They walked through a short corridor to where the trauma ward connected to the rest of the ship. There had once been many ways in and out, but now only one door kept them separated from the empty vacuum of space. "Hold the light higher," Sungjin said as he examined the door seals. "I think it's holding, but the attack damaged the locking mechanism. We should reinforce it." They used pieces of metal from broken equipment to strengthen the door. It wasn't pretty, but it might buy them a little more time. "Do you think Earth will send help?" Sungjin asked quietly. "I hope so," Dr. Park replied, "but we're very far away." Meanwhile, across the solar system, the footage from the Compassion played on billions of screens. People watched in horror as the Keldari ships fired on the clearly marked hospital vessel. They saw the desperate messages from Captain Kim. They saw the ship break apart. On Earth, in a deep underground room, the United Earth Defense Council met for the first time in 50 years. 12 men and women sat around a large table. They represented all parts of Earth. They watched the footage one more time. "The attack was unprovoked," said Director Ju Han. She was the head of the council. Her gray hair was cut short, and her face showed no emotion as she spoke. The Compassion was on a medical mission. It carried no weapons. "Do we know if there are survivors?" asked another council member. The last transmission showed some sections of the ship remained intact. There could be survivors, but their situation would be critical. How long would it take to reach them? A military officer stepped forward. "Our nearest vessel is the EAS Defender, at maximum speed, 5 days. "Too long," someone said. Director Han stood up. "We will send rescue ships immediately, but we must also respond to this attack. For 200 years, all species have respected the neutrality of medical vessels. This is not just an attack on a ship. It is an attack on the very rules that keep peace in our part of the galaxy." The room was silent for a moment. "The Keldari are new to our region of space," said a council member named Doyun. "Perhaps they don't understand our ways." "They understand weapons well enough," said another. Their attack was deliberate and precise. Director Han looked at each person in the room. "We have been a peaceful people for generations. We have not built warships or weapons of mass destruction, but we have not forgotten how." She pressed a button, and a holographic map appeared above the table. It showed Earth's defense systems and ships. "I propose we activate the full defense fleet for the first time since the Great War. We will rescue any survivors of the Compassion, and we will show the Keldari that attacking the human hospital ship was the worst mistake they could make." One by one, the council members voted. The decision was unanimous. Earth would respond. As the council meeting ended, Director Han looked one more time at the frozen image of the Compassion before it was attacked. Its white hull had represented the best of humanity, the desire to heal and help others. Now it would become something else, a reason to remember that humans could also fight when pushed too far. Defense Minister Minji Kang stood in the great council chamber on Earth. The room was round with tall windows showing the blue sky outside. 200 people sat in seats that went up like stairs. They were leaders from all parts of Earth. Minji wore a simple gray suit. Her hair was tied back, showing her serious face. On the big screen behind her, pictures of the destroyed hospital ship Compassion filled the wall. "For 2 centuries, we've presented ourselves as healers and diplomats," she said in a clear voice that filled the room. "Today we remember we are also warriors." The room was quiet. No one spoke. This was a big change for Earth. For many years, humans had worked to help other beings in space. They built hospitals and schools. They fixed broken planets. They did not build weapons. The attack on our hospital ship cannot go unanswered, Minji continued. 26 survivors may still be alive, waiting for rescue, and 436 people died. Good people who were there only to help others. Fleet Admiral Jinwoo Lee stood next to her. He was an older man with a face that had seen many things. He had studied war his whole life, but never fought one. Until now. Show them, Minji said to him. Admiral Lee pressed a button on his small computer. The screen changed to show Earth's orbital shipyards. These were huge rings around Earth where ships were built and repaired. They had been used for science vessels and hospital ships for many years. Now they were full of different ships. Bigger ships. Ships with weapons. These vessels have been kept ready, just in case, Admiral Lee explained. They have not been used in fighting for 200 years, but they work perfectly. We have always been careful. The screen showed workers moving quickly around the ships. Lights came on inside vessels that had been dark for years. Weapon systems that had been covered were now open. In 3 days, we will have 30 ships ready, Admiral Lee said. In 7 days, 100 ships. People in the room looked surprised. Most of them did not know Earth had so many fighting ships hidden away. Why did we keep these? Asked a young council member. An older woman answered her. Because humanity learned a hard lesson long ago. Peace is wonderful, but some will only respect strength. The screen changed again. Now it showed a meeting room with strange beings sitting at a table. They had rough skin like bark and no hair. Their eyes were yellow with black lines. These were the Keldari. This meeting happened yesterday, Minji explained. We sent our best diplomats to talk to the Keldari Imperium. In the video, a human woman spoke. The attack on our hospital ship was against all space laws. We demand an explanation and justice for those who died. The Keldari, who seemed to be the leader, made a sound like rough laughter. When he spoke, his words were changed by a translator. Your ship was in our new territory, he said. We are expanding. If your people die, that is unfortunate collateral damage. The human diplomat looked shocked. The Compassion was clearly marked as a medical vessel. It had no weapons. It was helping people from many worlds, including your own people who were hurt in the asteroid strike. The Keldari leader waved his hand as if pushing her words away. Humans are weak. You help others instead of becoming strong. We respect only power. The video ended. The council room was very quiet. They do not know us, Admiral Lee said softly. They have only seen one side of humanity. Earth's president stood up. He was a tall man named Jungbo Kwan. His voice was deep and calm. Before we take action, I will offer them one final chance, he said. I will speak to their leader myself. Perhaps they can be made to understand what they have done. The next day, President Kwan sat before a communication screen. The face of the Keldari Emperor filled it. Behind the Emperor, other Keldari watched. Great Emperor, President Kwan said politely, I come to you about a serious matter. Your forces destroyed our hospital ship, the Compassion. This ship was helping the sick and hurt, including your own people. The Emperor's yellow eyes narrowed. Yes, we have heard your complaints already. My answer is the same. We are expanding our territory. Your ship was there. That is all. This is against the laws of space that all civilized beings follow. The President said, we ask for 3 things. Say you are sorry. Punish those who gave the order to attack, and pay to help the families of those who died. The Emperor made that rough laughing sound again. Some of the Keldari behind him joined in. And if we refuse? The Emperor asked. Then humanity will respond, President Kwan said simply. More laughter filled the screen. The Emperor leaned forward. With what? More hospital ships. Will you throw medicine at us? Humans have no warships. Everyone knows this. You have been peaceful for too long. You have forgotten how to fight. President Kwan did not get angry. He just nodded slowly. I understand your answer. Remember that we tried peace first. The screen went dark. In space, above Earth, Admiral Lee walked through the flagship of Earth's fleet. It was called the Retribution. Workers were finishing the last repairs. The ship had been kept ready for 2 centuries, just in case it was ever needed. Status report, Admiral Lee said to his second-in-command. All systems are green, the officer replied. Weapons are at full power. The fleet is ready, sir. Admiral Lee looked out a window at the Earth below. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from space. For many years, humans had worked to keep it that way. They had become healers and builders instead of fighters. But deep in human memory was something else, something the Caldari were about to discover. The rescue ships are ready, Admiral Lee asked. Yes, sir. They will jump first to try to save the survivors of the Compassion. Admiral Lee nodded. And after the survivors are safe, his officer's face became serious. Then we show the Caldari that hurting our healers was the worst mistake they could make. Throughout the fleet, engines began to glow. Ships that had been sleeping for centuries woke up. Humans who had trained for a war they hoped would never come took their places. Earth was awakening. And the Caldari would not laugh for long. The Caldari guard yawned at his post. The night shift at Border Station 7 was always boring. Nothing ever happened here at the edge of Caldari space. His job was to watch the long-range sensors for any ships coming near their territory. The guard took a drink from his cup and leaned back in his chair. The Caldari had taken this sector easily. The other races here were weak and afraid, especially the humans, with their hospital ships and peace talks. A small light blinked on his screen. The guard sat up. Something was coming out of faster-than-light travel. Probably just traders. He tapped the screen to get more information. Then more lights appeared. Many more. The guard's yellow eyes grew wide. He hit the alarm button. Command. Many ships approaching. At least 50. No, more than 100. By the time the Caldari commanders woke up and reached their stations, it was too late. The human fleet had arrived. The human ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time. They were long and sleek, shining silver in the light of the nearby sun. They moved together perfectly, like they were all parts of one big machine. The ships came out of faster-than-light travel already in attack formation. On the bridge of the lead ship Retribution, Admiral Jinwoo Lee stood calmly. He was in his full uniform with gold buttons that caught the light. His face showed no anger, only focus. All ships report ready, Admiral, said his second-in-command. Admiral Lee nodded. Begin Phase 1. Rescue ships proceed to the Compassion wreckage. Combat vessels target only military installations. No civilian targets. I repeat, no civilian targets. Yes, sir. Sending the orders now. The human fleet split into 3 groups. The smallest group raced toward what was left of the Compassion. The second group moved to block any Caldari ships from escaping. The largest group began the attack. The Caldari leaders were shocked. They had believed humans had no warships. They thought humans had forgotten how to fight after centuries of peace. They were wrong. The human ships fired with amazing accuracy. They did not shoot randomly. Each shot hit exactly where it was aimed. A Caldari weapon station exploded. A communication tower went dark. The engines on a Caldari warship stopped working. How are they doing this? A Caldari commander shouted. Their targeting is perfect. What the Caldari didn't know was that humans had never stopped studying war. They had not fought for real in centuries, but they had practiced and planned. They had built powerful ships and kept them ready. They had trained officers in battle skills, hoping they would never need to use them. But now those skills were needed, and the humans remembered everything. Admiral Lee watched the battle on his screen. Disable their warships, but do not destroy them if possible, he ordered. We want to show strength, not cruelty. The human ships fired special weapons that shut down Caldari systems without killing their crews. Ships that tried to fight back found their weapons suddenly not working. Ships that tried to run were quickly caught. One Caldari captain, braver than the others, aimed his ship directly at the Retribution. "Enemy vessel on collision course," reported a human officer. Admiral Lee didn't look worried. "Tractor beams. Hold him in place." Invisible beams of force reached out from the Retribution and caught the Kildare ship. It stopped moving forward, held in place like a fly in a spider's web. "Send a message to their captain," Admiral Lee said. "Tell him his bravery is noted, but not needed today. He and his crew will not be harmed if they power down their engines." After a minute, the Kildare ship's lights dimmed as it shut down its power. Far away, at the remains of the hospital ship Compassion, other human ships were on a different mission. 3 rescue vessels approached the broken shell that had once been Earth's largest hospital ship. Inside what was left of the trauma ward, Dr. Jayan Park and the other survivors didn't know help was coming. Their oxygen was almost gone. Several people were unconscious. "I think I heard something," said Nurse Hyunlee, lifting her head. Dr. Park was too tired to hope anymore. "It's just the ship settling," she said. "Metal expands and contracts in space." But the sound came again. A clunk, then a hiss, then a grinding noise that got louder. "That's a docking procedure." Medical Officer Sungjin jumped up. "Someone's connecting to the airlock." The survivors looked at each other. Could it be true? Or was it the Kildare coming back to finish them off? The sealed door at the end of the ward began to move. Everyone held their breath. The door slid open. A woman in a blue uniform stepped through. Her name tag said Lieutenant Yoon Hae-yoon, Earth Rescue Corps. She looked around the room at the dirty, tired survivors and smiled. "Dr. Park," she called, "we've been looking for you. We've come to bring you home." Dr. Park couldn't speak. Tears ran down her face. Lieutenant Yoon put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. You're safe now. We have medical ships waiting. Everyone will get the help they need." As the survivors were helped into the rescue ship, they passed by a row of windows. Dr. Park stopped to look outside. In the distance, she could see flashes of light. The battle was still going on. Earth ships moved gracefully through space, disabling Kildare vessels one by one. "I didn't know we had ships like those," she said quietly. Lieutenant Yoon stood beside her. "We hoped we would never need them, but we kept them ready, just in case." "They're destroying the Kildare ships." "No," Lieutenant Yoon explained. "Admiral Lee has ordered that no Kildare ships be destroyed if it can be avoided. No civilian targets are being attacked at all. We're only disabling their ability to fight." Dr. Park watched as a human ship fired at a Kildare weapon platform. The shot hit exactly one spot, and the platform went dark without exploding. "Even now, we're trying not to kill," Dr. Park said softly. Lieutenant Yoon nodded. "That's the difference between us and them. Even in war, we remember mercy." The rescue ship pulled away from the wreckage of the Compassion. As they flew toward the safety of the human fleet, Dr. Park took one last look at the hospital ship that had been her home. Its broken hull still showed the red medical cross, now split in half by the Kildare attack. She thought about all the people who had died there. Good people who had only wanted to help others. Their deaths had awakened something ancient in humanity, the will to fight. But even as humans showed their strength, they also showed their restraint. Humanity had remembered how to be warriors, but they had not forgotten how to be humane. The grand meeting hall was filled with people from Earth and representatives of the Kildare Imperium. 1 month had passed since the human fleet had quickly defeated the Kildare forces. The walls of the hall were made of glass, showing the blue Earth sky outside. Long tables were arranged in a large circle, with the Earth leaders on one side and the Kildare on the other. Dr. Jayan Park sat quietly, watching everything. She wore a simple white dress instead of her doctor's uniform. Her hands were folded in her lap. Sometimes they still shook when she remembered the attack on the Compassion. The Kildare looked nervous. Their rough bark-like skin seemed paler than usual. Their yellow eyes darted around the room. They had expected to be treated harshly after their defeat. They had expected anger and punishment from the humans who had so easily overcome their forces. President Jung-Do Kwan stood to speak. Today we meet to decide the future between our peoples. The attack on our hospital ship cannot be forgotten, but we must find a way forward. A Keldari leader named Provokes stood next. He was the new leader after the Emperor had been removed from power. We offer our surrender, Provokes said. His voice was deep and rough. We accept whatever terms humans demand. President Kwan nodded. Before we announce our terms, we will hear from someone who lived through the attack. He turned to Dr. Park. Dr. Jayem Park was the chief medical officer on the Compassion. She will speak now. Dr. Park walked slowly to the center of the room. All eyes followed her. The Keldari looked down, unable to meet her gaze. I was on the Compassion when your ships attacked, she began. Her voice was quiet but clear. I watched my patients and colleagues die. People who had come to help others, including your own people, hurt in the asteroid strike. She paused, taking a deep breath. For days, we survivors waited to die as our air ran out. We thought about our friends who were gone. We thought about why anyone would attack a ship that came only to heal. The room was completely silent. Even the air seemed still. But I cannot advocate for vengeance against an entire species, Dr. Park continued. The Keldari people are not their leaders. As healers, we must break this cycle of violence. That is what my friends on the Compassion would want. The Keldari representatives looked up in surprise. This was not what they had expected to hear. Dr. Park turned to look directly at Provokes. Your leaders were wrong to attack us, but your people should not suffer for that mistake forever. She sat down. Her hands were shaking again, but her face was calm. Defense Minister Minji Kang stood next. Our terms are as follows. All Keldari warships will be disabled for 10 years. Keldari space will be monitored by Earth observers. The leaders who ordered the attack will stand trial. The Keldari nodded. These were strict terms, but fair after what had happened. But Minister Kang continued, we also offer these things. Medical aid for all Keldari who need it. Educational exchange between our peoples. Trade agreements that will help both humans and Keldari. And after 5 years, if peace holds, a review of all restrictions. The Keldari representatives looked at each other in confusion. They had expected only punishment. They did not understand why the humans would offer help after what had happened. Provokes stood again. Why would you help us after what we did to your hospital ship? Admiral Jin Wu Li answered, because that is who we are. We prefer to heal rather than harm. But make no mistake, we will fight if we must. The peace treaty was signed that day. The Keldari left with a new understanding of the humans. They had seen humanity's strength in battle. Now they saw their strength in peace. 6 months passed. Dr. Park stood in front of a huge white ship. It was the new Compassion, rebuilt and ready to return to space. It looked like the old ship with the same red medical cross on its side. But it was different in many ways. Workers moved around, loading the last supplies. Medical staff in blue uniforms boarded the ship. Dr. Park watched it all with mixed feelings. She was happy to see the Compassion fly again. But she still remembered those who had died on the first ship. Are you ready, Dr. Park? Asked a voice behind her. She turned to see Captain Junho Wang. He would command the new Compassion. Yes, I think so, she replied. It feels strange to go back to space after everything that happened. Captain Wang nodded. Many things have changed. He was right. The new Compassion would not travel alone. Nearby, a second ship was being prepared. It was smaller than the Compassion, but clearly a military vessel. Its dark hull was marked with the name Vigilance. The Vigilance will travel with us, Captain Wang explained. No one will dare attack a human hospital ship again. Dr. Park looked at the military ship. I wish it wasn't necessary. So do we all, the captain said. But it is for now. Later that day, the Compassion and the Vigilance left Earth together. Dr. Park stood on the bridge of the Compassion, watching the stars appear as they left Earth's atmosphere. The ship hummed with life around her. In the medical bays below, doctors and nurses prepared for their mission. They would visit 5 systems, including Kildare Space, to provide medical care. "It feels good to be helping again," she said. Captain Huang stood beside her at the window. "Humanity remembers its duty to heal," he said. "That has not changed." Dr. Park nodded. "And the galaxy now remembers our resolve when that duty is threatened." She thought about the Kildare and the other species watching this mission. The first journey of the new compassion was being broadcast throughout known space. Everyone would see the hospital ship and its guardian, the Vigilance, working together. The message was clear. Humans would continue to extend their hands in peace and healing. But if that hand was slapped away, the response would be swift and certain. As the compassion moved deeper into space, Dr. Park felt both sad and hopeful. Sad for what had been lost, but hopeful for what might come next. The galaxy had learned something important about humans. They were healers by choice, but they remembered how to be warriors when needed. And they were very, very good at both.